It's funny. I talk to so many people in the industry, outside
Yeah.
of the industry, diners, that there's this sentiment around, man, when's Main Street gonna kind of get it together?
I feel like it was so close leading up to pandemic. Like we
Yeah,
did Pajoli and we opened and we were crazy like every night for that
yeah,
first 6 months before
yeah.
pandemic. And then, things started opening and it felt really good over there. And then pandemic hit and it was like all of the crystal shops and nail salons came back and there were, two frat bars and the nightclub was there. And everything else that had talked about opening that was coming just didn't anymore.
Hmm.
And it was like vacant spaces and kind of sad. And, we had the outdoor thing, but I thought, Main Street started talking about how they're once a month going to shut down the street and do this big
Hmm.
outdoor
Hmm.
thing. And they tried it a few times and it felt kind of half baked.
Mm.
Like it could have been on the
It could have
cusp
been
of
a
being
thing.
cool.
Yeah,
I really wanted this feeling of like San Sebastian where you get the bites and you're out on the street and you
yeah,
can
for sure.
have the drinks and like, and it just never happened. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I love Main Street. It's like
I
it's the
I do
only street that
too.
feels like that in LA,
Yeah,
that I've found.
it's true, and I still love going, and obviously I'll go to Pajuli or go to a few other places, even just grab a glass of wine at Cuckoo,
Yeah.
close to you all. But I'm sure you look at that as an opportunity, that challenges opportunity, especially with Celine because it's such a sort of a destination
Yeah. I mean,
spot.
I have this for better or worse, I have this habit of not making the easy decision. Um, I'm
I feel
sure.
like there's a lot of guests in the past who've had that same comment. They're like, "Why do I take the hard way
Yeah, and
all the
everything I
time?"
do is the hard way, and I don't know why. Like, I'm sure if I would have stayed in Chicago, it would have been an easy path. Um,
You're probably right.
I'm sure if I wouldn't have chosen the omelet parlor space for Pajoli or dialogue in a food court in Santa Monica, um, I think Pajoli could have been awesome in like Beverly Hills or West Hollywood or Silver Lake or
Yeah.
but I fell in love with neighborhoods. And for me, it was like, I don't want to do this, Starbucks approach of walking traffic and spend per capita and, so on and
Mhm.
so forth to figure out like, okay, these three corners are the most ideal place. I wanted to just go with what I loved and what felt right. And
Mhm.
I remember I walked into the Pajoli space and looked around and I was like, this feels familiar and comfortable. And,
Mhm.
it was like Bear Burger at the time and it was a train wreck and they had like
Mhm.
upside down lamps from TJ Maxx hanging above their bar. Um, but the omelet parlor, people still come in and like, where'd the omelet parlor go? We've been
Yeah.
here for that's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
gone
that's
for like
been
10
gone, that's
years.
been gone.
Um, and so when we were looking for a location for Celine, I still had this mindset of I want to be a part of curating this neighborhood because I think it
Mm,
has so much potential.
yeah.
Um, and we looked at that space for probably like 3 or 4 times. We got deep into negotiations and then it fell through. And then finally it worked and we did it. But I think we've had that space for like over 3 years,
Mm,
probably 3 years before it opened.
yeah.
Um, and it's that area just it's like so close.
Yeah.
We joked that it was 2 dive bars away from a train wreck and 2 great restaurants away from being a really good destination.
Yeah.
Um, for a long time I had aspirations of, and I still do. It's just money. Money's always the problem.
Of course. Yeah.
But of opening like a great like adult bar, like a cocktail bar on that street, a place
Yeah.
where you and I could go after dinner and
Yeah.
grab a drink and not
I
get
but
spilled on.
but I thought
You know?
the last time, well, not the last time, gosh, it was a while ago, but, like, Michael Simkin was in, and he's like, we wanna do a, there's something, like, across the street, or
Yeah.
there's a bar, there's a wine bar, there was something
Yeah, there was a
like.
bar down the street that just closed that had a 48 license and
Yeah.
the people in the building behind it took control of the whole block, so they sealed off their emergency exit.
Yeah.
So it went from like 150 occupancy to like 49.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's cocktail bar size.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, something else going in there.
Yeah.
So
What, there's been obviously been a big announcement with Rene Redzepi and
yeah, yeah.
Noma, and like, this focus on LA, and him with all these amazing quotes about how exciting LA
Mhm.
is for him. And, how do you think that maybe helps, adds conversation to what you and so many of our contemporaries of amazing chefs are trying to do in this city of Los Angeles.
I mean, LA is a confusing city because it's so vast. You're basically like taking Manhattan and just stretching it,
Yeah.
right? There's like no limits to the end of it. And
Mhm.
part of my draw in moving here was, before I realized that there isn't great fishing right off the coast of LA, like no one's bringing
No,
in.
no one told you that.
Yeah, no,
You
I was
know?
like, the ocean's right there. Like we can go get our own seaweed. You can't get your own seaweed. You got to have someone bring it from up north or down south. Um, but you look at it and all of these things that, we were bringing in these little plastic containers in Chicago. It's like a weed here, like nasturtium. I mean, my neighbor literally just mows over it. I'm like, don't mow over that.
Mm,
But then the next neighbor has it, and the next neighbor has it, and the LA is this beautiful little box where it doesn't give itself to you, but the more you invest in it and the more you
mm,
engage in it, the deeper you dig, the more you find.
mhm,
You it requires a tremendous amount of awareness. Um, it's not an easy city, but when you engage for that amount of time and really invest in it, you find a lot, and
mhm,
it has that opportunity to give to you.
mhm,
I think that's what people start to discover the more they spend, like the
mhm,
more time they spend.
mhm.
That first visit, you're like, what the hell do I do here? And I remember when my mom came, she was like, I want to see the Hollywood stars. I was like, you don't. Like, you
Please,
don't.
you're like, please don't.
It's like 10 blocks of sidewalk
Yeah,
squares that each one has a star in it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But from the outside, you don't understand that. And so the first time I visited, I remember Mike, my business partner,
Mhm,
brought me down to Abbot Kinney. I was like, this street makes no sense. And then
mhm,
he's like, okay, let's go to another neighborhood. And I was like, that's it? That was the whole neighborhood?
mhm,
Um, and, the more time I spent, the more I understood that there is just so much here. You just
mhm,
have to let go of what you know.
mhm,
You're never going to move here and find a new version of your neighborhood bar or the same tree lined street with brownstones. Instead, you have to step back and say, okay, I'm going to embrace all of these things that I didn't have before instead of looking to replace the things I had.
mhm,
Um, I remember when Ackett's came here and we started talking about doing the dinner. I was like, what herbs do you want? And we have this little garden, and I literally can pick anything there. And if you want to go foraging, as long as it's the right season, it's all here.
mhm,
And you're not getting, a couple radish flowers. You can pick the whole radish plant.
mhm,
Um, and when you start showing the creatives like that, like Renee or Ackett's or,
mhm,
someone of that genre, that's what gets them excited.
mhm,
That's why I moved here,
mhm,
and that's, I'm sure why when you talk to these big chefs, these, chefs that offer unique perspectives, they see those nuances. They see that opportunity to have these things at their disposal.
mhm,
Even though we don't have a farm here, we have everything else.
mhm.
Um, and it makes it pretty magical.
Yeah, LA has, it's been a tough year, it's been a tough
It's been a
year.
tough 5
It's been
years.
yeah,
I
you're
feel
like
I feel like you get up, to bat
age
again, and you
10
get
years and
sniped with the
5
ball, and
years.
then you get up to bat again, and you get sniped again,
Well, and,
and
there's always, this duality of amazing, exciting things and then, you know, closures
Mhm.
of places or restaurants or institutions, and it's kind of that duality always taking place. But, we have the Olympics coming up. There are so many things to be excited about
Sure.
with this city. Not just big temple cultural experiences like that, but like what you're doing. And like you said, like Main Street's a couple restaurants or bars away from really being something exciting. You're like, okay, well, I got to contribute to that. I got to
Yeah.
contribute to this. Obviously, there's been some new stars that are falling in the city, in the city from a Michelin perspective. Also, Renee announcing that, it's there's obviously excitement, but there's also difficulty taking place. But do you think we're moving in a direction um, that's there's more to be excited about in sort of creative culinary experiences?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, frankly, I think the chefs here are doing a good job, right? And I think they're doing a great job of offering a unique experience, and not necessarily a dig on New York, but for a while when you went to the top restaurants, the experience wasn't that different,
Mm,
right? Like, yes, they're very different restaurants. Per se is different from Danielle and Jean George and so on, but they are a similar template. Here, when you go to the top restaurants, every single one is drastically different.
mm,
And that to me, says a couple things. One, it says that the creatives here are creating, but it also says that a marketplace is allowing for creativity. Um, the thing that excited me the most in 2016 when I moved here is that it felt like early 2000 Chicago.
mm,
In early 2000 Chicago, for me, when I started cooking there, was that magical moment where you had all of these sous chefs coming out and opening things. And I think
mm,
a great dining scene really only exists when you have great diners enthusiastic and wanting to support it. You look at restaurants like Moto in Chicago.
mhm,
Um, Moto had probably an equal amount of brilliance and train wreck all in it.
mhm,
But the dining scene was so excited about what it was doing that the bad parts were overshadowed by the celebration of the ambition
mhm,
and the greatness. And, it paved the way for a whole genre of restaurants in Chicago. Um, New York had that with Wiley Dufresne.
mhm,
I think WD-50, from my perspective, certainly more brilliance than, mistakes, but to his credit, he was swinging as hard as he could,
mhm.
and the city was excited.
Yeah.
Um, and so I come here and I see a lot of these chefs that I felt like I was sitting in similar situations to. I know at the time Nomad and James Kent were coming out here because it was before he'd left Nomad. Um, Hollingsworth had moved here. He was coming out of Laundry.
Mhm,
Um, Jessica Largy was coming out of Manresa. I'd known Jordan Kahn for years, since our time together at Alinea.
mhm,
And you can kind of like cycle through this laundry list of chefs where I saw it and thought, we're all trying to do the same thing from a different perspective in a
mhm,
new city. And here's an opportunity where a city seems like it's going to be excited about it.
mhm,
You know, Suddenly, after several years of everyone saying, oh, LA food sucks, people are like, wow, what is in LA? What's happening right now?
mhm,
Um, and I remember friends from Chicago texting me and they're like, have you been to Funky yet? Or not Funky, Felix yet?
mhm.
I was like, yeah, it's a neighborhood spot. And they're like, that's all we hear about for pasta. We have to go. And it was something really interesting to hear these Chicago chefs asking about that
Mm,
when, I think a couple years prior, all they talked about was like Carbone,
yeah.
and granted, they're not the same restaurant, but to have that shift where they're suddenly talking about restaurants out here,
Mhm,
not restaurants from the East Coast, was
mhm.
really kind of this, inspiring but also, gratifying moment to say like I
Mhm.
did make the right decision to come
Yeah.
out here to do
Yeah.
this. Like there is some magic happening.
Yeah, and kinda help pave the way,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, which is super exciting. I wanna get into Celine.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about Celine, but let's rewind, a little bit. Who's Dave Beran today?
Oh God. Um kind of a mess. I'll be honest with you. I'm all over the place. Um I'm at that weird point in my life where the world's kind of out of your control. Um, I have an almost 3-year old and an almost 1-year old. I've got an almost 6-year-old restaurant and a 6-month-old restaurant. Um,
4 kids?
yeah, basically I have 4 kids. I live in a little apartment in Venice that doesn't have a yard, that's not big enough. Um, I'm just in the thick of it. Like I wake up every morning, I'm like, what train's gonna hit me today? Um, it's been I think right now I'm at that point of kind of re-understanding who I am and what my perspective is.
Mm,
Um, if you'd have asked me 2 years ago or a year ago, even, I think I would have had a very clear answer. Um, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I
mm.
don't. I don't know. I think I'm at the point of kind of redefining what that is.
I think that's
Yeah.
an exciting place to be.
It can be.
No,
It can be an
because
exciting
listen,
place to be.
I've been there, Dave,
Yeah,
and I'm we're ever evolving. We're
sure.
always evolving. But when you're in it, it's wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Any change is wildly uncomfortable because it's the unknown. But if you when you get past certain moments, you're like, wow, that's what really helped define
Mhm.
the next 10 years of my life or really set me on on a new path. And so let me maybe rephrase the question a little bit because you obviously bring up being a father. How do you think becoming a father has reshaped, the way you create, the way you lead, the way you think about, the
Yeah,
world?
I mean, well, Celine's named after my daughter. And granted, her name is not Celine because, I can't directly name it. I can't give her that ego. Um, but her name is Harvest Moon. We call her Harvey, but middle name Moon. Celine's a girl's name meaning moon in heaven.
Mm,
So, um, walking around with a small child, you forget that there's magic in everything.
mm,
You forget what it's like to just stop and like stare at leaves blowing in the wind or jump in a pile of leaves because you're an adult, right?
mhm,
You're over it. Nothing's new, nothing's exciting anymore.
mhm,
Um, you watch a movie and it's not exciting unless there's a bigger explosion or a crazier plot twist.
mhm,
And um, being with her and kind of learning to slow down and embrace a moment, it's really changed my perspective on kind of what the experience can be or
mhm,
should be. Um, it's for better or worse forced me to take time, um, not just creating,
mhm.
and kind of live more in a moment. Um, yeah, I don't know. It makes
Which is
you.
often good for creativity.
It can be, yeah. Sometimes you feel like you're like sitting there, like if I could just have another hour at my cutting board.
Of course.
But at the same time, you start to realize that there's magic in the mystery, and you
Mhm,
start to re-embrace that sense of wonder. Um, I mentioned at one point that I don't think I ever take the easy path, but I think a lot of the development and creation of Celine, it could have been the template that I understood at Alinea that I know was very successful,
mhm,
um, that I was a part of early on. And I felt like I had a very good influence on it and a good understanding of it. The next template was very good and it was obviously very successful early on. Even dialogue, in my head, dialogue was such a departure from what I've done before. And it's like, no,
mm,
we're never going to do what we've done. And we're going to do this thing that's so different. And we're going to change the whole menu all the time. And then I look at it, I'm like, I just did what I did next. And I took my box of Legos and I dumped them in a pile and I built different shapes out of the same
mhm,
Legos.
mhm,
Um, and so with Celine, you know, I, I originally started with a lot of those templates. I was like, well, this works. And then we'll
mm,
do this. And
mhm,
what if we did that? And about 3 months before we opened, I scrapped it all. And I said, we're going to start over. Um, and at that point, I was really looking at this idea of one, I wanted a restaurant that existed outside the four walls.
mm,
I think great restaurants do one of two things. Either, the carnival fits within the walls and that carnival can be moved anywhere.
mhm,
Um, or you have the restaurant that can only exist in a time and place.
mhm,
And I'd only worked in the carnival. Um, and so I said, we're going to embrace everything and we're going to bring it all in from the outside and say, like, this is Southern California and this is our
mm,
influence. And the conversation really started with watching my daughter walk through the garden. And,
mhm,
now she's obsessed with borage flowers. And she's like,
mm,
I want the blue flowers. And for me, it was just a flower we put on a plate that kind of tastes like an oyster. But for her, it's this like magical thing that she can eat. And so, you start to look at that and you're like, okay, well, why does she like going underneath that tree? Why does
mm,
she like peeking around those corners? And, that led into this design idea where the lighting would be only where we want the guests to focus. So
mm.
as the servers, and you may have noticed this when you're dining, or hopefully you didn't notice it. When the diners aren't standing at your table, or I'm sorry, when the guests aren't standing at, no, the servers. When
Mm,
the servers aren't standing at your table, you don't see them.
mm,
You see silhouettes,
mm,
um, because that's how we pin the lighting.
mhm,
Um, it creates those dark pockets that make you want to kind of peer into them, that make you wonder what's over there.
mhm,
Um, a lot of that influence comes from just walking around with a little kid,
mhm,
and I don't think it ever would have happened if I hadn't had that first.
mhm. Why was it necessary to start over? You're talking about the influence of your child but, you could have had that influence and still kinda done the template that you knew because it's been a successful template, but why for you was it necessary to start over?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a super successful template, and I think if I would have just done it, and, we still have that debate. Like, the other day, I replated our sorrel dessert, and it looked exactly like an Alex Stupak Alinea plating, like his old chocolate double
Mhm,
helix,
mhm,
and everyone walked by and they're like, "That's so pretty," because it was. I mean, Stupak, there's no one like him. Um, and I looked at it, I was like, "But we can't do that. It's been done." Like, "But guests would love it. It's so great." And, it was this huge moment where I looked at it, I was like, "Should we? Did I screw up?"
mhm.
Um, I don't know why it felt necessary. I mean, it would have been easier, right? It would have been, I don't know. It's just that pursuit, right?
Yeah,
I don't want it to be stagnant. I feel like I haven't hit my best yet.
yeah,
And I feel like if you keep just doing the same thing, you're never going to be better than what you were.
mhm,
And, with Seline, I looked at it and I said, okay, let's start in a different direction.
yeah,
And, for one thing, we started by designing all the plateware before we even thought about the food. We started with the aesthetic and the feeling of restaurant before we started with the food.
mhm,
And the whole idea was it's like looking down this funnel where the last thing at the very base is the food, and all of that's influenced by how you want the experience to feel. Um, the problem with that is you're learning what the experience is as you go. Um, so I think we started out great, but I think now when I look at the opening menu, I'm like, oh, look at how far we've already come.
mm, mm,
There's like, I think I counted the other day and we're at like 53 dishes since we've opened, and our opening menu had 15. And it's like, does this work? Doesn't this work? Throw it away. How's the experience?
mhm,
How cohesive is it? What's better? What's worse? Um, and you go in every day and you're like, we accomplished something. We were better because of it.
mhm,
Even when, people are like, when should I come in again? When does the menu change? I'm like, well, it's not that you didn't have our best, but
mm.
we're better. There's
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
something else. And um, I really think that understanding that voice was something that I needed.
yeah. Mhm.
I needed to know that what I did in Chicago wasn't the best that I would ever do.
Why is that important for you?
It's just the pursuit, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think I think that so I used to bike a ton before I had kids that, take up the time,
Take up
obviously.
all the rest of the
Yeah,
time.
it's not easy to go on like a 4-hour bike ride 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It's easier
Yeah,
when
your
your
wife would
wife's
probably divorce you if
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you were
it's
just
easier when your
gone.
wife's working in the morning and she needs quiet in the house and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna leave at 7 a.m. I'll be home at 11 to shower and get ready for work, and let me know if you need anything along the way." And I remember being on a bike ride one day with our opening beverage director of Pajoli, and I was talking to him, and we got in this. He's a very quirky dude, but very philosophical,
Mhm,
and very well read. And we got down this sort of argument path of like, is happiness a pursuit or is happiness the end?
mhm,
And are you happy with everything being done? And ultimately, I think for me, happiness is the journey, and I feel best when I know I'm continuing to work towards something.
mhm,
So, maybe it's because I've never had it all
mhm,
that I don't know what it's like to be there. But I think that pursuit is just as, if not more rewarding than the final point of it. Because once it's done, it's done. Like once you're happy, are you just happy and you're like, okay, I quit. I'm done. I'm happy. But then what?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of people who, like, got the award and then immediately a day later, "Well, what's next?
Yeah,
What am I" what so, yeah, it is, it's that journey, it's that pursuit, it's yeah, even the hardest times end up with, perspective and years, you go, "Wow, that was kinda
sure.
sorta like the most fun." And so, in a lot of ways, you're probably in that moment of,
Yeah. I
of
mean,
the journey
I don't
right
know that
now.
I've ever had a harder time than
Yeah.
right now, so I hope this is the hardest time. Um, the juggling act, the relearning what your voice is, learning how we're just doing something that we've never done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
we talked, it was, a couple weeks ago and talking about how, like, Celine is this culmination of your entire career. It's your relationships, it's your learnings,
Mhm.
it's the failures, as well. Because I wanna dig in a little bit deeper. What part of Celine are you seeing so clearly, and what part are you like, we're still figuring that out?
I think all of it. I think all of it we're still kind of figuring out. And
Mhm,
I see very clearly the progression and the it's tricky because like every time I think we see it and I think it's exactly what it's supposed to be, I change it.
mhm,
Um, I think right now the focal point is, I remember the success of dialogue in the guest interaction with the counter. And we still have guests all the time who are like, oh, but we just love the counter. We love sitting at the counter. And for me, the counter was great because you got to talk to people, but it was also like a cheat code.
mm,
Like if you're sitting there and you're chatting with us and, we're all shooting the shit because we're friends and then I have some squab trim and I have a sauce I'm working on back and I put it in deli cup and I drizzle a little over the top and you eat it and you're like, oh my God, that was the best thing. It wasn't the best thing,
mhm,
but you just got something that no one else got in a deli cup and you felt like you were an insider. And so there were a lot of moves of dialogue that we planned and pulled where it was like, yeah, we have some braised pork cooking in our pork stock back here that we actually threw in 2 hours before service because we know that we're going to serve that to everyone at the counter and they're going to be in awe of the fact that like they see us taste it and they're like, oh, can I try it? And then
mhm,
they just got something awesome. And so we planned that as like a course in the menu, even though, as far as they knew, it wasn't.
mhm,
There were a lot of cheat codes with that. And so at Celine, I wanted the refinement, but I
mhm,
think, my head at first it was going to be cooks are going to run and serve all the food, and they're going to build that same counter relationship. But we're learning that that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is they're cooks and they're running back to the kitchen and they're out of time and they aren't servers, right? They're
mhm,
not front of the house. They don't
mhm,
have that gift of being that genuine narrator. And you can get away with a lot of that at a counter. You can't get away with that in a dining room. And so right now we're really focusing a lot on the cohesion between front and back of the house and how the storyteller and narrator relates to the server or
mhm,
the cook server. Um, learning how to evolve a guest experience. Um, the big thing with Celine, actually, the thing I am most proud of, um, as I talk about this, it starts to occur to me. I didn't want a fine dining restaurant that felt frightening,
mm,
or intimidating.
mhm,
And by that, I mean, a lot of times when you go to a fine dining restaurant, you're nervous, right? Can I touch this? Did I dress the right way? Am I running late? What if I get lost? Um, Here's 25 questions as soon as I sit down. What do I do? Do I get this?
mhm,
Do I get that? I
mhm,
don't know. Um, and so when we started designing Celine, a lot of that conversation went back to where does that stem from?
mhm,
Where does this notion of the fear of fine dining start? And from my perception, it starts when you're a little kid, right? You have that room in your grandparents' house that you're not allowed to go in, right? The
mhm,
dining room that
mhm, mhm,
on Easter you eat in, or Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas, and there's the hutch with the things you can't touch. Um, and so you're not allowed to go in there. You're not allowed to say the wrong thing. You're not allowed to touch the wrong
mhm,
thing.
mhm,
Um, And my grandparents had that, right? It
Mm.
was the room that had a baby gate in front of it, even though there were no kids, right? There were no
You're
babies.
you're all in your teens, but there's a
Yeah.
baby
No,
gate.
I mean, I was the only grandkid at that point, but there
Yeah,
was there was the door, and it
yeah,
was myself and the dog. We weren't allowed in there.
yeah.
Um, and so then you start to think, okay, well, where is it comfortable? And my grandparents had that room in the back of the kitchen, or in the kitchen, right?
Mhm,
The kitchen was in the back of the house.
mhm,
And there was like that shitty wobbly card table in the kitchen, and it had mismatched chairs, and everyone sat there. And there was a sliding door to the backyard, and when the dog needed let out, you let it out, and you played
mhm,
cards at that table, and
mhm,
you had snacks and most of your meals. And so the big thing we wanted to do is, how do we make people feel that level of comfort when they come into Celine?
mm,
Um, and so one of the conversation points was, well, what happens when friends come over? If the doorbell rings, you don't know them. You know
mhm,
they're not your friend.
mhm,
Um, your friends come in through the door in the garage, or they
mhm,
come in through a sliding door in the kitchen,
mhm,
and they usually come in through the backyard.
mhm,
So we thought, well, how do we do that at Celine?
mm,
So we flipped the front doors of the gate on the outside, so it's backwards. So the hinges are on the outside, because in your backyard you never see that. Then we made everyone walk through a yard, and our host walks out of the kitchen and welcomes them into the restaurant, and they come in through the kitchen, and they come and sit at tables that all look in the kitchen.
mhm.
We hid the formal dining room. We made everyone sit at, I mean, it's not shitty, but our shitty card table, right?
It's definitely not shitty.
No, no, it's not at all. But it certainly feels like home.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that, from day one, even when our garden wasn't fully grown in, um, that disarming of the guest,
Mm,
that moment of, I'm excited, but I'm not nervous.
mhm,
Um, from that point on, it's been, how does the experience continue?
mhm,
Right? We did it right with the space. It's not scary. It's not overwhelming. It's cozy.
mhm,
It has those pockets where when you look around the corner, you're like, could there be a fireplace back there? And if there
mhm.
was, it wouldn't be
Yeah,
weird.
it's funny, I kind of was, like, looking to the to the
Yeah.
right, like, what else is going on,
Yeah.
over
And
there?
even like the bathrooms, you walk down
Yeah,
this hallway and into these bathrooms. It's like you're stepping into another storyline.
yeah.
Um, there's those quirky notes. And I think, yeah, that's the thing that I probably love most about it right now. It feels good.
Mm.
Um, every aspect of it, the bookshelf in the kitchen, the way the kitchen's laid out. Um, the rest of it is just putting the puzzle pieces together in the right way.
Yeah, Stephanie and I were chatting, a few weeks ago, and she mentioned the bookshelf or the cookbook
Yeah.
wall at Celine, and that it feels more than just decor.
Yeah.
It's maybe a declaration of some sort. Like, talk a little bit about that and how, that plays
Yeah.
into.
So at Next, we built the spice rack wall in the back of the kitchen. Partially because I hated the spice drawer at Alinea, because half the time it would come off the track, and it was annoying. But I also thought, what a great talking point. Next changed its cuisine all the time. What if we had all these spices on the wall, and we use them as inspiration? Like, oh, what are those for? Oh, I'm going to go over and smell them. And, oh, here's curry, and and frankly, we used like 12% of them, and the rest of them eventually went bad and we threw them away.
Mhm,
But they looked really nice. Guests loved taking pictures in front of it.
mhm,
It was just like a pretty aesthetic thing. And so at Dialogue, because there was no space, we had a miniature spice wall of only the things we used.
mhm,
Um, and then at Celine, I talked about doing a whole spice wall, right? And I thought about it, I was like, why are we doing this?
mhm,
Um, and if the point of having that is for inspiration, then why don't we put something inspiring? I have a lot of cookbooks. All those cookbooks are from my house.
mhm.
And, it's not like chefs are just like lining up to send me cookbooks. They can, if anyone wants to.
Like,
I'll add it to the
anyone
wall.
listening, you're about to get a
Um,
number of cookbooks sent to
yeah.
you.
Send suggestions. No, so I looked at it and I thought, there's a problem in the industry to some extent. And that's that a lot of young cooks don't know where things came from. Or, I remember when Albert Adria walked into Pajoli, and I don't think I mean, I think I had two people in there who knew who he was. And he is, in my mind, like one of the greatest chefs ever. And it was a little heartbreaking to me that you look over and you're like telling a cook, like, you need to know who this person is. Um, we've had other chefs walk into Pajali and the team, they don't know.
Mm,
And so I thought, why don't we put something that's actually inspiring on the wall? And when you see an alginate ball on a menu, you don't think, wow, this chef's so innovative. You think, oh, that's where it came from.
mhm,
Um, so many of my cooks didn't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and call anyone out, but there's a lot of restaurants or chefs that you see where you see a dish and immediately I'm like, oh, that's this restaurant from this year.
mm,
Right. And I didn't want my cooks or frankly myself to look down on those people. I wanted them to look at it and understand the pedigree or the
mm, mm.
tradition or, you know, that everything truly is derivative and it's about evolution.
Yeah.
Creation is just as important as evolution.
Mhm,
And so I brought all the books and I said, if anyone wants to come in early, use them, take them off the wall, make yourself a coffee, sit in the dining room, read.
yeah.
The big thing is I didn't want them coming in and just pulling down books and making recipes out of them or using them for, I want it to feel like it's a home or a study hall, not like they're doing it to like, not like free labor, like go research this and make this for me to see.
Mhm,
Um, I just wanted to be inspired.
mhm,
And I didn't know if this generation of cooks would do that. I would say almost all of our cooks, at least once a week. So we alternate our cooks. So you'll work 2 weeks PM, 1 week AM,
mm,
2 weeks
mm.
PM, so that they're all cycling through all the stations. And usually those PM cooks are coming in an hour early and grabbing books and they're like ripping through the El Bulli books and the Fat Duck books. And, now I think a lot of them are into, like the Central and Barago and
Yeah, 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 for
that
sure.
window, and they're just like one of my guys had never worked pastry before, and he's on the pastry station, so he
Mm,
asked what pastry books he should get. And I was like, just look at that row,
yeah.
you know, start there. You can look at modern pastry, you can look at classic pastry, but just start here.
Mhm,
Um, and I don't know that it nor care that it like makes the food they're producing at our restaurant better or worse or different. But I think what it does is it makes them more intelligent. It makes them this deeper level of cook where they
I
have this understanding and they can look at things and say, "Oh, I get it now." Like these dots are connecting all of a
yeah.
sudden.
I think it's more curious, more invested, potentially, more passion,
Mhm.
going into what they're doing. I think in any profession, like, you have to study the greats.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, even in order to be an incredible innovator, like, you have to kinda know so much has been done
Yeah.
already, and there's so much to learn from there. It's funny because, on the iTour episode, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, but, we talked about maybe a little bit of this lack of curiosity.
Mhm.
And by the way, not coming after young chefs, but
Sure.
but from the diner perspective as well. And he was saying, as a young chef, he's like, he used to try to get that book, and you treated it like a treasure
Yeah.
because it was expensive, but also, like, I mean, it was like a Bible for a little while
We
that
also
you
didn't have like Instagram or
correct,
Granda or whatever where it's
correct.
like, "Oh, here's the thing. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to do it." It's that
Yeah.
was it. I remember when I worked at True, we got the French Laundry book and the Aquavit book because I think those came out the same year.
Mhm.
And I remember those being on the pass and they're about the same size.
Mhm.
The photography was, if I remember right, is similar. And I remember just like looking at these two books for so long, being like, wow, like food like that. Like Marcus had a mushroom tea,
Mm.
and I'm just like, no, like whatever. Like we opened with a mushroom tea and it's, totally different. But
Mhm.
um at the moment, I just remember thinking like these are such cool things, and what did you have back then? You had like e-gullet and then you started to get some blogs,
Mm.
but that was about it. You didn't
Yeah.
have food forums and nothing was accessible.
Mhm.
Um, Books were it, and
Yeah.
they're magical,
Yeah.
and then you had this book, and then maybe the chef came into your restaurant You get them to
And then you're
sign
like,
it.
oh
You're
my
like, "They're
god."
here." And the chef always looks at it like, "Oh, that's so old. We haven't done that food in 10 years." And
Yeah,
you're just looking at it,
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
"I just got this last week."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. We talked a little bit about you wanting the guests to feel something.
mm,
Obviously not just taste something, and I love how you've been kind of talking us through some of the design, some of the decor, because that plays into wanting the guests
yeah.
to feel something. But like kind of what is the role of emotion? What emotion do you want people to kind of feel as they walk in through the garden and they walk into your kitchen and
The conversation that we're having right now, um, well, I'll back up. So at Alinea, we always talked about nostalgia, right? These nostalgic triggers, these things that, take you to a point in your life that reconnect you because there's nothing more impactful than that. Um, at Seline, it wasn't about nostalgia. In fact, we talked a lot about how we didn't want that to be the trigger because, at some point you can start to feel a little gimmicky with it, or, there's just some people who are wizards with it, who can just put you in a place. Like Achatz can do that. The balloon, the
Mhm,
tabletop desserts, like,
mhm,
it was just thing after thing after thing. And all the things we were creating there, they were through that lens.
mhm,
Um, I wanted, and I think the thing we're driving towards, it's really twofold. One, I want that little bit of sense of mystery and wonder and surprise of like, I don't know how these things came together, but I know that they feel right. Um, but deeper than that, the conversation that we're toying with right now, and um, frankly, there's this Marco Pierre White interview that's been going around that I remember seeing a version of it at one point, but it's really kind of resonated more and more is that notion of romance.
mm,
You know, I think there's that time when you read a book or you watch a movie, and I remember, this is such a stupid story and I'm sure everyone's going to make fun of me for it when they hear it. Um, but I remember being a little kid and going to see The Lion King in the theater.
mm,
And I, was what, 94 maybe? So I was uh 12, 11, 93, 11, somewhere in there.
mm,
Um and you're right at that age where you're like starting to like girls, and um it's kind of a romantic movie in that little way. Like the lions fall in love at the end and then
mhm.
he saves his kingdom. If you haven't seen it, that's what happens. Go see Lion King.
Spoiler alert
Yeah,
for those who haven't watched.
Nala's a really cute
Yeah,
lion.
yeah.
um but I do remember, like, I had this feeling when I left there, and it was, you kind of fell in love with it a little bit. Like you shared the emotional connection. And
Mm,
granted, like, it was a little kid, and I understand that this is still a silly story, but I've had those moments where you've left experiences, whether it's a
mm,
restaurant or something, where it's made you feel that way.
mm,
It's made you feel a certain way, and you can't get that out of your head. Um, and I'm trying to understand how to get us to that point.
mm.
How to build, maybe not the romance. Like, I don't expect you to fall in love with my leek and eucalyptus dish and say like, oh, this is,
Possible.
but maybe it, and again, this kind of nods to nostalgia, where maybe it does put you in a place you've been before,
Mhm,
or maybe it takes you somewhere you want to be.
mm,
And I think that, that's a tricky game because it has to be done very thoughtfully, but it's almost like a lot of happy accidents that make it happen, because you
mhm,
can't say this is the one where they're going to feel that way and this is the one where we're going to feel that way. um it's a whole new realm for me with food. It's even
mhm,
the way we're plating now, and the way we're presenting dishes. It's very, I mean, I hate the term, but it's very not molecular,
mm, mm,
right? Like, hopefully if we're using a trick, you don't know how we're using it.
mhm,
It's not like, okay, here's, the liquid filled thing, or here's the, here's the new texture out of the obvious thing. It's like it's tucked away in there, for a surprise element. But I think that's, and especially with the way we're pushing to evolve the experience over the summer, um, because we know we're slower during the summer. We're always
Mhm.
slower during summers, um, because people who come to the beach don't want a tasting menu. Um, so we're using that opportunity to kind of push that, the romance of the garden. Like early on, I'd talked about this idea of the secret garden, and somehow Eater really ran with that idea of I'm
Mhm.
opening a secret
Mhm.
garden. And people thought the name was Secret Garden, which was also weird because they're like, "Where's Secret Garden?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
You're like, "Wait, what?"
But it was more about that feeling of you open that door and you don't know what's behind it, but when you see what's behind it, you're put in this place that you didn't know you were going to be.
Yeah.
Um, that's the romance, right? That's the thing that takes you somewhere and leaving you alone for a moment to kind of discover it. Um, I think that's really the step forward for us over the next few months. And I think that has been sort of that carrot on the string. How do we get to that?
Mm.
How do we get you to the point where you've fallen in love before that first bite?
Mm. I love that. I've asked this question before to many people, and I think it's really appropriate right now. But before I get to the question, as you're in this state of becoming, you're on your journey,
As I'm
Dave,
as
right?
I'm
Right.
standing in my shitstorm
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now. Yeah.
exactly. As you're going through the storm. But in parallel, Celine is in a state of becoming as
Mm.
well. As more of our friends of the industry of diners go and experience Celine, what do you want them to say about the overall experience?
It felt familiar, but unlike anything they've had. There's a subtle familiarity to it and a comfort, but I don't want you to have any course there that you feel like you've experienced somewhere else. And I want it to be one of those things where you felt like you came into our home and you left as friends. And not to say like, look, we're not going to like text each other on Thursday and be like, "Hey, you want to grab a beer?" It's not that kind
Again,
of
it's
like,
possible. It's
yeah, I mean,
possible.
it's not that kind of left as friends, but I think, in my perspective, a great restaurant, or the restaurant we are trying to become, offers three things, right? It offers a sense of time, a sense of place, and a unique perspective. And I think we're really developing that sense of place. I think working with the gardens that we do and working with the farmers, and trying to tell the LA story, but not tell the, you know, we're going to do a fine dining street taco, but instead my perspective of how has LA influenced me. Um, I think that is really becoming our sense of place,
Mm,
to where when we serve a dish and I look at it and think to myself, I couldn't serve that one somewhere else, that dish is a success.
mm,
Um, time, like everything's relevant, right? Whether that's seasonal or whether that's influenced by what's happening around us.
mhm,
Um, and then perspective, like I want you to feel like you know us when you leave after having the food, and I think a lot about, we were talking about Noma earlier. There was this course I had at Noma the first time I ate there in 2009, maybe 2008. Um, and one, when I ate there the first time, right, it was chef de cuisine of Alinea. I think we were at that point 7 in the world.
mhm,
Like I had a lot of ego, and yeah, I didn't think I did, but in hindsight, I did. I was 28, um, and I remember eating this course, and it was very simple. I'll probably screw it up, but it was like a bowl of pickled vegetables that were just, they were spinning them around their
mm,
fingers, so
mm,
they're little rings. And if I remember correctly, it was a pork broth and like some pork bone marrow, just
mm,
really simple. And I remember thinking, this dish is stupid, right? Like I got it, and they just poured it, and Renee might have spooned it in for me.
mm,
Um, and I talk about this dish a lot with our staff
mm,
because I, at the time, thought that was a dumb dish. I was
Mhm.
like, what's the point of this? Everyone
Mhm.
raves about this dish. This is whatever.
Mhm.
And then 6 months later, we're at the World Top 50, and I'm sitting at a table with Daniel Hume. We're all having dinner. There's like 8 of us. And it's like Thomas and Laura are at the table, and Ackett's and his girlfriend, and then Gadara and Hume are sitting next to me and my girlfriend, and Hume had just eaten at Noma. And he's talking to me, and his voice is like, "What do you think?" And
Yeah.
being Daniel, and he said
It's a
it's
good impression.
everyone has a version of
Yeah,
Daniel. It just depends
exactly.
on when you hung out with him. And I told him, I was like, I didn't get it. I wanted to get it, and I didn't get it. And he said, "What course didn't you get?" And I told him about that course. And he said when he was growing up, his grandmother, you know, in that part of the world, you have the root cellars, much like, I remember having with my grandparents in Michigan. Um, they didn't pickle vegetables like Daniel's grandparents did.
Mhm.
But there was this soup made from pickled vegetables and boiled pork bones. And he
Mm.
said that was the most perfect version of that he'd ever had.
Wow.
And I wish I would have known that story when I ate it, because it was the perspective I wanted.
Mm.
And it was certainly relevant of a place and of a time. Because I ate there in winter.
Mhm.
And that dish in that moment with Daniel telling me that went from being something that I kind of, I mean, frankly, I made fun of.
Disregarded,
Yeah, I
kinda
cast it
completely.
aside. I was
Yeah.
like, how is this place? How do people say this place is better than Alinea? That's where my head was at with it.
Mm, mm,
Again, ego and closed mind, and say whatever you want about a
mhm,
28-year-old who's running a restaurant,
mhm,
as a chef de cuisine, and you've got your 3 stars and your whatever else. Um, and I don't think there's a dish. Well, there's a Corey Lee dish now that also haunts me, but other than that, I don't think there's a dish I've thought about more
mhm,
at any point. And I don't. I think my perspective on Renee and Noma has made that and El Bulli become the 2 most influential restaurants in anything we do. And the problem with that is I love this and I'm good at doing this, and I don't know where the line is in the middle where both can live.
mhm.
Um, but
That's what you're working on.
yeah, but that is time, place, and perspective.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's what we're trying to wrap our head around.
I love that. Well, that's the North Star. Now we just need to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
Now I
there
just
we
have to
go.
keep convincing people that, yeah, I know you were here 3 months ago, but you should come back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
keep coming back and see I mean, the good thing is every night when we finish service, I don't look at it and say, "Oh, I wish we were better."
Yeah.
I'm proud of everything that we're doing every day and the growth we made. And we opened with this idea that we were going to be thoughtful and delicious and have hot food hot and cold food cold
Mhm,
and execute at the level we needed to with a brand new team in a brand new restaurant doing a
mhm,
style we hadn't done.
mhm,
Um, and I don't think we've served a bad meal,
mhm,
but I think each time we do it, we're getting better. Like what we're doing
mhm,
today, we couldn't have done day one.
mhm,
And what we're going to do in 2 weeks, we couldn't have done today.
mhm.
So,
Well, I think we're all excited to see how the evolution and the state
yeah.
of becoming continues to,
The problem is when you don't have patience and you're like,
yeah.
we need to do this
You're
tomorrow.
like, "I want it now.
Yeah.
I want it now." I wanna transition a little bit, but I think it's relevant to sort of the time and place that we're in right now. But, you trained Jeremy and Will for the Bear. You've done many conversations of,
Mm.
about that. But, as someone who's spent your life really in kitchens, running kitchens, how do you feel about how the industry is being portrayed? And what do you want audiences and diners to really know about the heart of restaurant life?
Restaurant life is hard, and it can be rewarding in moments, but it can also be a pretty thankless thing. Um, you look at like the Bear gets a lot of criticism, right? People love it, people hate it. it,
People love to hate it.
yeah,
People, there's
people
everything in
say it's a
between.
terrible portrayal of the industry. People
Yeah.
say I've experienced that exactly, and whatever. It's a TV show, and frankly, like if an episode cataloged an exact day, it would be boring, right? It's entertainment. You have to take the culmination of all of the chaos and pack it into a show. That's just it, right? It's like if you watch Top Gun, they're not flying airplanes like that every day, right? That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Um, and so from that regard, like, I like it. I think it helps that, I got to know them, and like Poulter, when he's in town, he still comes in and stage with us. He spent
Amazing.
he spent friends and family with us. Like there's all these pictures from friends and family when our photographer was there, and I'm trying to like get pictures so we have social media stuff, and half of them Will's in. I'm like, I can't put that on our
Yeah,
social media of like
yeah.
everyone's gonna think Will Poulter's a cook in
Well,
our restaurant.
people are gonna expect that
Yeah,
then,
they'll be
you
like, "Where's
know?
Will today?" Like, "Oh, is he between
No, but
jobs?" Um,
you've been quite, complimentary of him, though.
Will's
I've
great.
heard it in
Will, yeah.
how good he was.
I would have hired both of them by the time they were done. Um, Jeremy was just straight focused.
Yeah.
He was good. There was no bullshit with him. He was like, "I'm gonna work. I'm gonna do it. I'm not screwing around." He It felt like method acting. Like he was trying
Mm,
to be
mm,
that character.
yeah.
Will was just fun. We taught him how to saber champagne. He was really into like working service. We had him serving guests. At Seline, he served Nancy Silverton, and that like blew his mind.
Amazing.
Um, no, the industry is tricky because you're always putting. I mean, at what I'm trying to do, I think at what chefs that I would like to think that I'm sharing a genre with, we're all trying to put a piece of ourselves out there. And so when someone looks at it and says like, "I don't like this," it feels personal, right? When something doesn't quite
Yeah.
go your way, they don't always realize that like that was 6 months worth of work, or that was 9 months worth of like, I mean, you ate the beef tendon,
Mhm,
right? And it seems so simple, right? It's puffed beef tendon with the seasoning salt on a stick.
mhm,
But what people, and it's our job to share this in the experience, but
mhm,
what people don't realize is that there's 20 years of relationship in that one bite, right? There's a friend that I met because he was very high up at Apple, and we were doing the first Apple book with Next for Paris 1906,
mhm,
and I've been friends with Glenn ever since. And when I moved out here, he's like, "Hey, I have a yuzu tree." And every year I drive to his house and I collect all of his yuzu and we chat. And he's just like a wonderful person.
mhm,
And one year he gave me branches that were all perfectly cut to 16
mhm,
inches long. And the yuzu, we ferment his yuzu every year. And so we're serving the branch that was harvested on the same year as the yuzu that we then fermented for a year. And then we've been holding on to for the right purpose because we didn't know how to use the branch.
mhm,
So we built the service piece to showcase his yuzu and to make the beef tendon look like an exaggerated cartoon version of a yuzu blossom,
mhm,
which is why we're serving it right now because now yuzu's blossoming.
mhm.
And it's this whole thing. So if someone just like eats and is like, "Oh, look at each your own," you're like really? Like, what did we do to not, there's a lot to it. There's a
Yeah.
lot more. And but that's what you sign up for, right? You don't sign up for it to have everyone. If you sign up for it thinking everyone is going to constantly praise you, you're in it. You're not, you're done.
Yeah, but that goes for
Yeah.
anything in life, any creative pursuit or even just a job. If you expect to be praised every day, you're gonna be miserable.
Yeah. And it's I think it's a Rick Rubin interview where he's talking about if everyone likes the thing you're doing, then
Yeah,
you're
you're
not
probably doing
pushing
it
hard
wrong.
enough.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah.
probably not doing the right thing.
And so for me, it's always been like I need to push and I need to push away from what I've done. I need to push towards what I think we want to do. And it's always a moving target, but the whole notion is I just can't keep doing that. If I keep doing that, then I'm not any better. And if I'm not any better, then I might as well be done.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, lean into the uncomfortable
yeah.
because, it may cause more uncomfortability, but you'll get somewhere. People on this show have heard me say this many times, but, Benjamin Franklin has this quote, "The things that hurt instruct." And, like, that
Yeah.
uncomfortability, if you lean into it enough, you're gonna learn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you can always I think that about my first year at Alinea and how hard it was. And I remember I had a cook the following year when I was a sous. He's like, I can't do this. I was like, look, you can always do more than you think you can, but you have to tell yourself you can do it,
Mhm.
you know, and you'll get there. I mean, we did those dinners with Ackett's at Seline like month
Mhm.
3,
Mhm.
and I felt uncomfortable, not because he was in there and not because of our kitchen, but because the first one was too easy.
Mhm.
And we both looked at each other in the end and we're like, should we have done more? Should we have pushed harder?
Mhm.
Mind you, we were just barely making all of our turns. The guests were happy.
Yeah.
And because it didn't feel hard
Mm.
and we weren't freaking out,
Yeah.
it felt like it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I was like, no,
Well, you
yeah,
like to take the hard way, Dave, all the
yeah, I need to
time.
stop doing that. I need someone to show me how to not take the hard way.
Yeah.
That's what I need. Like someone to sit there and say, no, this is the better path.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Cause at some point it's either gonna work or I'm gonna just like keel over and that'll be it. Everyone's be like, well, took the hard way. You know?
Dave, this has been great, and I'm excited for more people in LA and outside of LA to go to Celine. Obviously, continue to support Pajoli, also. But what's a life lesson you can leave us with?
Can't trust anyone more than you can trust yourself. You got to believe in yourself. That's it.
Continue to remind yourself that when you when you're like, I wish somebody would tell me to just do this. Continue to
Right? I
trust.
should just Sharpie that on the
Yeah, yeah,
wall.
yeah. Just sharpie that on the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah, we have our framed inspirational picture on the wall right now that we all look at every day and I'm just like, that's our push right now. That's it. So,
What
yeah.
what is it? What does it say?
Oh, it's the picture of Jordan saying and then I took that personally. And I took it personally. Framed
Right.
right there on the wall.
Yeah.
It's just like you got to go.
We're excited to see how this push continues to evolve.
Me too.